We are back on Big Board Sports. Roger Weiland along with Chris Honorato on this Tuesday morning. I read the well-written article column by Lars Anderson of the Bleacher Report last night. Phenomenal story on how football, high school football, is helping some hurricane victims in Texas heal. And the piece is called Friday Night Floodlights. And Lars Anderson, who wrote the article, joins us here on Big Board Sports. Lars, Roger Weiland, Chris Honorato, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Quite a story, Lars. I mean, I'll let you set it up, but I mean, you're talking about an area that was just basically destroyed by the hurricane, and yet life went on with high school football being the centerpiece of kind of rallying this very small community and getting them back and helping them get back on their feet.
Yeah, I went down to Refugio, Texas, which is about 30 miles inland from the Gulf of Mexico. And they absolutely just got shredded by Hurricane Harvey. Harvey still had winds of about 130 miles an hour, and it had slowed to about 4 miles per hour. So it just inched over this town of about 3,000 people and destroyed about 90% of the homes, and a lot of the kids they're in a low income area. They lived in trailers, and the trailers are gone. Trees on top of houses. You know, I have some experience with this in that I wrote a book about the tornado that went through Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and that tornado was about a half mile wide. And to me, when I went down to South Texas, it was just like the tornado, but it wasn't a half mile wide. We're talking about 8 miles as far as the eye can see. It is the amount of devastation was just staggering. And a lot of the kids who lost their homes ended up staying in the team weight room. It was one of the places that was relatively untouched by the hurricane. And about 13 days after the hurricane rolled through, they decided to play their first football game of the season. And Refugio is the reigning state champs in Texas. They play in the smallest classification. And football is just immensely important to this community. And they ended up playing in a town about 25 miles away. And even though a lot of the people don't have transportation, they don't have homes, by the end of that game, there was probably 2,700 people from Refugio in the stands, meaning almost the entire town had made the trek to see their boys play. And it came down to the final play of the game, and the Refugio ended up winning the game. And it was stunning to me afterward. Almost the entire town just came down onto the field, and they all just kind of stood there together, hugging and crying underneath the Friday night lights. And they didn't want to leave. You know, they just wanted to sort of absorb this moment of profound joy. And it illustrated to me the power of sports, just the ability to sort of transport yourself away from the horror of what you just experienced and the absolute grind of your daily life. And it was a really nice moment. And then, all the kids got back on the bus, and they went right back into the devastation. And I was riding with the coach, and the coach looks at his phone, and he's got like 45 text messages from family, from his parents saying, "Hey, I need help with building my home. I don't know where my kid's going to stay." Just all these multiple issues that a typical coach doesn't have to deal with.
Lars Anderson of the Bleacher Report with us here on Big Board Sports 104.5 The Team, ESPN Radio. Lars, you've seen just about everything, and the book you referenced is a terrific read if you're interested in how Tuscaloosa was able to come back. The Storm and the Tide, written by Lars Anderson. I recommend it highly, and you can find Lars on Twitter, where he has posted this piece, Friday Night Floodlights, at Lars Anderson 71. Lars, Chris Honorato here with Roger as well. Over your career, you've seen just about everything. Are you, and I know you just expressed it there a little bit, but are you ever surprised at what sports can do? I think we're all hoping the NFL might somehow find a way to heal what's currently going on in this country. Are you ever surprised at how powerful these games can be?
I am continually surprised, and that's really why I still do what I'm doing after 20-some years. And I sort of specialize. I don't know how this happened in my career, but I've been specializing in writing about tragedies. And for this game, this high school football game down in Texas, it was the first time that the community was able to come together, and it was almost like this communal grief therapy session as much as a football game. And the fact that it was so exciting, and they ended up winning. I mean, winning and losing really was inconsequential, but just that it brought everyone together, and just the sharing of stories, and that sort of brings, almost like credibility to your own experience. Because again, this is the first time a lot of these people had seen each other, and just knowing that, oh, you're doing okay. How's your home doing? This is what happened to me. And just the ability to share stories and communicate is so important. And yes, I mean, I do think sports sports can't solve all these problems, but in special places where sports are so important, like in South Texas and in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, sports can play a special role in the healing process when something as devastating as a tornado or a hurricane happens.
Well, what was even, the fact that they could even play this game under the conditions was unbelievable. The way you wrote the story to tell about what they were going through, and yet they could still, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Lars, they hadn't practiced, right? They hadn't played in a couple of weeks. I mean, I don't think the coach really knew when they got off the bus how the heck this team could even, do anything, because they've been totally out of sync here, not playing.
Yeah, exactly. They had 3 really brief practices, and in that short amount, and they had missed about 2 weeks of practice, and so they only have 3 days of practice. And one of the younger assistants tells the head coach, "Look, we're not going to get them in shape, so let's not run them at all and make sure that their legs are fresh." But by about the third quarter, these kids were just dying out there on the field. I mean, they were so tired. Just taking knees, and there's only like 31 kids on the team, and most of the kids play both ways, just absolutely exhausted, and a bunch of them afterward just collapsed, and just they were so tired, they were almost like they couldn't express any emotion, and that even fueled even more emotion in the parents and the fans in the stands who came to see these kids play, and how it was so, heartwarming to see how this town just invested their sort of hopes and dreams into these kids, and how just so much joy came about because of this game. And again, like this temporary oasis from the horrors that all of these guys are going through. Just when you lose power for 2 weeks, you really come to understand how important electricity is. And just for a lot of these kids, just the ability to take a shower in the weight room was a big deal. And a lot of these kids didn't have anything to begin with. We're talking kids who are living in trailers and don't have many belongings, and a lot of them don't even have shoes now. They don't, and most of them were wearing clothes that were donated. And the opposing team was nice enough; they offered them a hot meal afterward. And just the fact that they were able to get a meal was a big deal. And the fact that these kids were well fed, the coach was really happy about that, because he knew going back home that night at about midnight that these kids aren't going to be hungry for a while. And I mean, they are literally, moving hour by hour down there trying to figure out where the next meal is, how these kids are going to be housed, and when is school going to open. And it's just, it was shocking to me how bad the conditions were. And again, and this is after seeing Tuscaloosa get ripped apart by the tornado. It was shocking to me just how bad it was down there.
And then, Lars, I guess only fittingly enough, I mean, not that it made a difference whether they won or lost, the fact they were just playing to get their minds away from everything and rallying this small little community, but they actually did win the game, right, in almost dramatic fashion.
Yeah, they ended up winning the game. The first play of the game, the coach for Refugio called a flea flicker. He completes it for a long gain, and then that sort of sets the tone, and they took this big lead, and then the other team came back and rallied, and it came down to basically the last play of the game, and a pass fell incomplete, and Refugio won, and this explosion of emotion and noise that came from these 2,700 people in this tiny little grandstand in the middle of nowhere, Texas, just echoing all throughout the flatlands there of Texas, was really a sight to behold.
The latest book out this summer, called The Quarterback Whisperer, details the great success now Cardinals head coach Bruce Arians has had in developing quarterbacks and the great ones he's worked with over the years. Lars, real quick, and we will let you go. Look, football in upstate New York is not what it is in Texas or Alabama, but I think players and coaches here would say the same thing. What is it about this sport that you've been around for a while now that just has kind of this rallying nature to it?
Well, I think it builds character. It's a microcosm of life. You know, hard work pays off. It's very, very simple things. And going to Bruce Arians, the thing that his number one thing when he is with a quarterback, and he's developed more quarterbacks than probably any coach in NFL history to perform at a high level, his number one thing with them, and it sounds simple, is that he just tells them he loves them, and he treats them like family. And he wants to know how they're doing off the field. He wants to know how their kids are doing. If they have any problems going on in their life, he wants to know about it. And because Bruce genuinely cares, they develop a massive trust between one another. And so that from that trust, the quarterback then really listens to what Bruce has to say, and from there the relationship grows and takes off. And you see that, even though they did get beat last night, and Bruce made a couple questionable calls there late at the end, but Bruce is just he's a master at relationships, and that's really what all the good coaches are about. And that's what I saw in Refugio with the high school head coach. He's a master at relationships.
Lars Anderson, thanks for a few minutes here on Big Board Sports. Great job with the article on the high school football team and what they went through to play a game. It was well done.
Thank you so much.